Clarity vote chaos is now underway as we near the last few hours of where anything can happen. So today is going to be a good one. We'll get right into it. I want to showcase right here as we are one day away, guys, 3 hours. And probably those last 3 hours are not going to matter because most everybody, if they're not leaving DC and they are staying over, then we might build a new counterclock. But right now, as of tomorrow, the Senate recess will be in play and clarity may not be on the table. That, of course, if you look at the poly market, it does showcase this. This is the weekly right now on where clarity odds are dropping to their lowest point in quite some time. And we're going to have a special guest on today where we'll break into this. But before we bring her on, I want to go over to a clip here. And this is, of course, what's happening in Russia around regulation. Take a look.
Russia passes the first comprehensive crypto law. Russia's new framework, which is effective from 1st September this year, has created the country's first full legal regime.
Watch Guru picked this up fast, over 437,000 views within hours.
Russia has finally gone all in on crypto. I freaking love this. Come on, Russia.
It landed on the same Tuesday as the clarity delay.
We are falling behind, everybody. So the U.S. just lost to Russia in crypto.
Don't mistake this for a full embrace of crypto.
It's the opposite. This is regulation as control, not regulation as liberation.
And get this, it's backed by a state-owned bank that serves Russian defense contractors and built by fugitive oligarchs.
And these depositories will need minimum equity somewhere between 50 million and 200 million rubles just to operate.
Russia still don't want people using crypto to buy everyday goods and services inside the country.
Retail Russians are capped at just $3,800 a year. That is absolutely tiny, and this was never about giving their citizens freedom. Large transfers to foreign accounts now require a mandatory 48-hour hold. That doesn't sound like consumer protection to me.
Тихо, тихо, тихо. За что? Задержан.
All right, so the point being is that this was all, I think, theater, and we kind of expected this coming out of some other countries. And that, of course, kind of puts it into the front of what's happening here in the U.S. So I wanted to bring on Kara Calvert, who is the Vice President for U.S. Policy at Coinbase. How are you, Kara?
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so a lot happening right now. We played a clip there, of course, of Russia, where really it's more of an oligarch setup over there. So it's not really regulation. We have seen good regulation, though, in places like Japan, which has been very pro. And then, of course, you look at what's happening in Europe with MiCA. And even to that extent, they've been somewhat regulatory, but at least they have a consumer element in it that is designed for, obviously, for users within crypto in general. But when you look at what's happening right now in DC, who would you say is standing in the way here on this last day before a recess?
Well, it's been a long slog. I'd say that there are a few issues that are left. Ultimately, though, we need to get to 60 votes. So a very few number of people can hold out a lot of power. And there are a few issues that Democrats have identified as key to getting their votes. I think each one of those has been ticked off, whether it comes from law enforcement. There's an entirely new law enforcement title. Combating illicit finance, there's a new title on illicit finance. There are new restrictions and consumer protections around intermediaries in the agriculture title. So there are a lot of provisions, and I think we've got a day left, as you noted. I love the clock. Everybody needs a good clock to get action, and I think that, hopefully we have a vote. Hopefully we see a motion to proceed filed today, and ultimately, I think the question is going to have to be called to see where people stand.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the point is that I think this would be a failure, especially for Republicans, if they don't even get it to the floor for a vote. So I think Thune, of course, is under the gun right now. What about the issue right now? Why hasn't Thune made a public statement on clarity, you think? Here we are a day before.
Yeah, well, he's said multiple times that he wants to vote before they leave. I think the big question is, when are they leaving? Are they leaving tomorrow? Are they leaving on Saturday? It's a bit like Tetris when you're in the leadership's office trying to figure out how to get all these things to fit together with the time requirements, with the necessary, whether it's time agreements or amendments, you have to figure out how it all fits together. So I think that's the big question, is when are they leaving? And then if this can fit into that time allotment.
Yeah. All right. So you're mentioning that, a weekend. Do you feel like a weekend vote could actually happen here?
Absolutely. I think that there is absolutely still time to get this across the finish line. I think the big question is whether or not it hangs out into September when they come back on September 14th. I think the conventional wisdom is right now they'll have a vote. It'll be a big moment. It'll be a moment that the industry that certainly I've been waiting for a decade. I started working in crypto in 2016. So this has not been an overnight process. It has been something that we have worked on for years. And I think the time has finally come where they're going to call the vote.
All right, so you feel it still is a possibility of being in play. We may have to extend our countdown into the weekend. You had Senator Tillis, though, also brought out something that, let me kind of zoom in on that. It says that the White House is now engaging on a bipartisan Clarity Act ethics text. This is almost unprecedented. We have not seen an administration go this far, especially this late in the game. And again, this looks at a possibility here of where this may eliminate all the issues that the Democrats were kind of pointing to. Do you feel that this is kind of the last thing, or is this still a situation of protecting the banks and so on?
This is absolutely one of the key gating factors, and it is unprecedented. Never before have we seen an ethics provision that has voluntarily been agreed to by a sitting president to put in place something that's never been done in the history of the United States. We've never had those types of ethics requirements, so that it really is unprecedented. And I think the question is, do they continue to ask for more? And I think Senator Tillis has actually played a really important role here of trying to determine what is the appropriate level of requirement and of an ethics obligation. So he's working through that. I think he's got a good faith partner with, at least with Senator Gallego. The question is how much further, especially when there's something that will directly impact the president and his family, and how do they think about that? So it's a big question and it's a big ask. And ultimately, I think that this may be the final issue that has to be addressed because it's the last big one. Things like the banks, and we can get into the issues around rewards and interest and yield. I think the banks have certainly been successful in getting the community banks to be really active on Capitol Hill. I think there's a lot of sympathy for community banks. I think the larger banks have realized that and have put the community banks out in front, and then have fallen back on the issues around, there are no law enforcement provisions in this bill. That's where the banks have now taken this. So the banks issue is certainly still out there, but I think really ethics is the issue that all eyes are watching right now.
So ethics, number one, but when you listen to Josh Hawley, who most of the time, he's kind of been against crypto, but not for this reason right here. And now he's talking about the effect on community banks. To your point, the very point you were just making, is that the ABA and the banking lobbies have been very effective, been able to reach some of these senators and lawmakers, that now the community bank issue is coming up. So is this on Josh Hawley's mind to where we would not be able to pivot him to a yes vote? Do you feel like that has been kind of the closing argument for the banks to be able to kind of lock in on some of these Republicans?
Senator Hawley is interesting. Every time we talk to them, there's a different issue in the office. Yeah. So I'm not sure what would get Senator Hawley to yes. And that this was the issue that he identified in public. Great. Now we know where he stands and at least what the particular issue is. I think that at the end of the day, there have not been solutions proffered by the banks on this. The only solution that they have offered is to ban third-party rewards because it allows stablecoins to directly compete with their payment operations. So again, this really isn't about deposits. It's about their payment and their competition in that, and basically in that environment. And so ultimately with somebody like Senator Hawley, he's making a point, and whether or not he votes for this bill, I think he's going to have to look at it on the merits. He's going to have to understand that this is better for America. Your opening scene with Russia, I mean, this is at its core a national security bill, just as much as it's a consumer protection bill. America, we are excellent at exporting things like our as we think about our deepest capital markets and our innovation and our leadership, but they also look to regulation. When we passed the Genius Act, all of a sudden, the rest of the world started taking notice. Central bankers were caring about this. Other regulators were caring about this. We export good regulation. Instead, you have Russia deciding what's horrible regulation. And if, God forbid, other countries start to pick that up, That's where I think that's what I think Senator Hawley is going to have to look at, and other people who are trying to determine what is the best foundation here in the United States. Do we take an argument that is not founded in reality, that this is going to impact community bank deposits? We have had stablecoins out there for years. We've been offering rewards for 4 years. Genius has been the law of the land for over a year now, and deposits have only gone up. So it doesn't make any sense. It's not founded in reality. But I get that it's a political problem.
Well, yeah, I think the argument that the banks, and definitely not on the side of the banks here, but yes, you're right. They have seen deposits, depositors going up. I think it was almost 7% year over year. So continue. That was JP Morgan. The point is that fintech is kind of coming along, whether we see clarity or not. The other thing that's happening is companies like Citadel. You've got Jeff Dorman out there kind of attacking on what you guys are doing and blaming Coinbase that Armstrong was kind of at the core of not getting this across the line. Why do you think we're getting so much pressure, you guys especially, from people like Citadel and the DTCC? Well, why do you think that is?
Well, it's ironic considering Citadel has had their fair share and their hand in making this much more difficult to get across the finish line. So I think that is what you're seeing play out in real time on X is really a reflection of where people come down on the legislation. Yeah. And Coinbase, there's been nobody at the table longer than Coinbase. There's been nobody, again, I started working for Coinbase in 2016, trying to get legislation passed, trying to get clear rules. So there's no company that's been at the table longer. I think it's really easy to have a scapegoat. It's really easy to point fingers at one company or any one particular player. But ultimately, back in January, the bill was not ready for prime time. And what we have seen is that had we locked in some really problematic policy, it's so easy for opponents to fall back on the argument of process. Oh, this was already passed. This was already part of the debate. This was already locked into legislative text. That process point, we would have handed that process point to opponents. So I think that we had to take action. That legislation was released with only a few days. It was released on a Monday night. We really had less than 48 hours to evaluate a 300, 400-page bill. Right. Yeah. And so that rapid movement prompted a lot of chaos. And ultimately, we feel like it's in a better place now by far. But certainly, I mean, we've been working on this for a long time. It wasn't us who were dragging out these negotiations on Capitol Hill. I think there were many other players here. I think the Democrats have a lot of wins to show for their 8 months of negotiations and nearly 400 extra pages. I think Republicans, certainly have also been at the table and have fought hard for what they want. And now you have a bipartisan product that's over 600 pages long. So ultimately, we also had a House-passed clarity bill that would have been great. We could have passed that last year when we passed the Genius Act. Yeah. But ultimately, that's how the Senate is. It's deliberative.
Yeah, it is. And just to remind everybody, the period in which the Citadel guy was talking about was a period in which we were seeing the full court pressure on stablecoin yields, which was being introduced in that, in that tax markup that you're mentioning. So why do you think that Citadel and DTCC have not seen the kind of backlash? Because the banks, I think, have seen the backlash from the industry. But if you look at some of these kind of pseudo financial institutions that could also play in this, why aren't they getting the heat?
Yeah, it's a good question. And just to go back for a second, back to January, it's a really good point. The provision that would have passed and would have been incredibly difficult to unwind would have killed third-party rewards. You couldn't have gone to use stablecoins and got a balloon as a reward in your local merchant shop. That would have been banned. Like, that is insanity when it comes to just pure competition and free markets and open innovation. So we really, I think, as a company that is built on that and really believes in our mission is economic freedom, that just ran counter to everything we knew. And so we felt very strongly that we needed to take a stand then for our customers and, frankly, for the innovation itself. And back to your question about why do I think some of these other players who have had, I think, shadow operations to make this bill really difficult? I think at the end of the day, this is a disruptive technology, and we saw that fight play out in some of the other sections of the bill when we thought about securities laws. What does a security look like? What that bill back in January would have done was basically said any new rules have to be identical to the old rules for securities. Well, if the old rules worked, we wouldn't be trying to make fit for purpose rules. And
Right.
so there was the incumbent industry was very interested in locking in everybody into the same old rules where you have regulatory capture. And that ultimately, I think, is where the industry came together. At the end of the day, I've never seen the crypto industry so united. It actually brought everybody together to fight as finally an industry that wanted a singular purpose, which was to get fit for purpose rules. So ultimately, it brought the industry together. I think you see all the different places that are being disrupted is where you're seeing the most concerted effort to oppose this bill.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and obviously the banking efforts that we've been covering this for many years. And I myself have been surprised because, we've been in media for a couple of decades. So I've seen a lot of the, let's just call it the PR strategies that many of these lobbies will take. And the one that has surprised me the most has been the ABA. I mean, they have got like data scientists or somebody up there understanding exactly where to push buttons and pull triggers. I was looking at this here recently. This came in from Punchbowl. And it was in reference to Rob Nichols. This is the president of the ABA. And of course, he's commenting on, guess what? The editorial that the Wall Street Journal put out by, guess who? The editorial board. Interesting that we don't really know who the editorial board is. But the point is that you're getting that kind of pressure right now. Who would be writing these kinds of things? Is this a seeded article from probably the ABA, or how does this get out there?
The talking points were almost identical to the letter that Rob Nichols sent, a few months ago. And the idea that, again, that this is a systemically risky endeavor when it comes to stable coins, when that there's no law enforcement protections in this bill, that there's concerns about DeFi, all of these issues that were raised truly read like the ABA or the BPI website. And so, of course, we're skeptical when we see that because it doesn't look like it's an unbiased approach. And then you have Brendan being, Rob retweeting Brendan because Brendan had a point of view, and then Brendan retweeting Rob, who had a similar point of view. It was an interesting dynamic that we saw, but the editorial board, it was frustrating because it didn't feel like an open, and certainly we didn't have any kind of contact leading into that type of a conversation. Or into that article. So I would just caution everybody as you read it to understand where these talking points came from. Throw it into your favorite LLM and discover and do a search.
Do a comparison. Yeah,
exactly.
Do a comparison of the two PR positions, and you might be right. I liked you guys' response on this. What's kind of in I guess poking fun at it. Fixed it there on We're Afraid of Competition, which is we get it. Let's talk about our favorite senator now, and that of course is Senator Warren. And Senator Warren came out. I feel like this was a little bit of a gaslight, but she, of course, is making her points known again the day before we're trying to get a vote across the line. Watch this clip.
Do you think there's anything that could happen to change it so that it would be appeasing to you in any way?
Of course. We need crypto legislation. I've been saying this for a long time. I put together a crypto bill. Yes, we need crypto legislation, but not this legislation. As far as I've heard, they've still not solved the problem of corruption, of consumer protection, of national security, or protecting our economy. And until you solve those problems, I just don't see how anyone, Democrat or Republican, moves forward on this bill.
Are you worried that the industry will leave the United States?
I don't even know what that means. You mean that they will do their money laundering overseas?
All right, so obviously the gaslighting continues from Senator Warren. She's a master at it, very good. I think most of those points have been debunked, and that is, of course, the ethics issue that was an issue has now started to draw down to almost no issue. And of course, the national security has mostly been on the flip side, is that this is good for national security. There's a lot of benefits to this. And innovation, that can still leave the shores, and we are already starting to see it. I would ask, why are we not seeing some sort of correlation to what's happening in Japan or what's happening in Europe with Mika? I mean, those are two simple, bad countries out there and areas and regions that have been able to come to some sort of alignment for the industry. So what do you think about her continued push on this?
Yeah. So again, going back to your very first clip with on the Russia regulations,
Yeah.
I think if Elizabeth Warren had her druthers, it would look a whole lot like the Russia
Like
regulation.
that. Yes.
Yeah. And if you look back at her crypto bill was the digital asset. Gosh, I'd have to remember it's DAMLA, and it's like not a very good name and not a very good bill. It looked a whole lot like the Russia bill and the regulation. So if that's Elizabeth Warren's, if that's the way she thinks that we're going to solve crypto, that and the need for regulation, she is completely missing the point. She is missing the point that this is actually good for consumers, that people want something that's better, faster, cheaper, has less lock-in, better access. And ultimately, then it's just back to control. It's the fact that just like in Russia, they want to control who accesses this, how much you spend on it, how you do it, when you do it. That is not America. So ultimately, I think that she has no interest in looking at the places that are doing it well, because ultimately that undermines her argument that this can be
for sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It does put her in a position that she doesn't usually have, which is facts, a position of facts, you know, that usually come into play. Hey, I want to go over to another clip here because this gets into the issue that we're faced right now with the Republicans. This is Tim Scott, and he talks about a few things. He gets into the banks a little bit, or kind of. This is Bartiromo talking to him about this. Take a look.
Or is it largely what Josh Hawley is worried about, and that is what the banks have to say about the crypto platforms? What's holding it up?
Well, Maria, the truth of the matter is the Democrats have been stonewalling for a year now. Every time we say yes, they move the goalposts. When banking committee Republicans coalesced around the bill, everyone getting in line, then we were able to get Democrats to come aboard. We'll do the same type of strategy once we have the vast majority of Republicans saying yes. I believe the Democrats come to the table and find a way to yes.
But the Republicans are not all on board, right? Because, I mean, you've got Mitch McConnell, you've got Josh Hawley, who says he's not going to vote yes because of what the concerns are from the banking sector. You've got Susan Collins that we're watching. What do you want to say in terms of the Republican support behind this?
Well, listen, I worked on Republican members yesterday. We made progress on the issue of rewards. Right now, Maria, crypto firms can do anything they want because there is no regulatory standard for rewards.
Yeah, it's a great point. All right, let me move on.
All right, so Scott kind of defending right now, on his heels a little bit there with the issue on Republicans, because there have been a few that we kind of knew where, you know, Rand Paul landed, where kind of Josh Hawley landed. Those weren't expected votes, but there was a handful that are kind of on the bubble right now. When you look at that, and remember, he didn't say anything about the banks. He was just pointing at the Democrats. So I'm like, what are the bankers doing right now? What's the ABA doing right now, Kara? Your team is probably ready for everything, aren't they?
They are canvassing. And let's be clear, the bankers are powerful. They're formidable. They have a banker in every community. They have a banker with the cell phone of every senator. Yeah. They have somebody who probably helped them when they were running for city council. So the bankers actually have a very long-standing relationship with a lot of these members and their staffs. I think it's interesting, though. We were in a meeting the other day, and they said, all we're hearing from is bankers. We're not hearing from the crypto community. Well, it turns out 30,000 emails have gone in to that office. There have been over 1 million emails going in from everyday American voters who care about this bill. Just in the last week, I believe, I'll have to check with Stan with Crypto, but I think they said they had something like 2,500 calls, not emails, not form letters. Calls go in and say that we care about this bill and we want it to pass because we think about crypto as part of our economic freedom, our financial abilities, our access. So it's just an imbalance in terms of who you have making those calls. And bankers are turning up the heat, not fading away. I think that ultimately there are Republicans who have been and continue to be concerned about where this deal is landing. Ultimately, though, when we talk to them and we say, talk to Senator Tillis, understand how we went for 6 months in negotiating what ultimately landed in the rewards section. The banks never showed up. Not a single CEO showed up to have those conversations. Mine did. My chief legal officer was there to negotiate it. We showed up every time and the banks didn't. And so when we think about where we landed, ultimately the rewards allows for third-party rewards for activity, not for holding, not for anything that is functionally or economically equivalent to a deposit. It's airtight. There's no way to get around it. So ultimately, when you think about how this is going to shape up, it's not competing with deposits. It's competing with other things that people want. It's competing with high yield savings accounts, or competing with money market mutual funds, or it's competing with just the ability to use collateral and the ability to go out and actually make trades and wait for a sale. Those are the types of things that people want to do, and the banks don't like it. It's truly not about deposits.
All right, I know you're on a hard stop, but I want to play this last clip because I have one last question for you. And this is Scaramucci and Novogratz kind of touching on this point, and then I'll go to the question. Here we go.
But I fear that Trump doesn't want this to pass because he wants to be able to say, hey, it's the Democrats' fault. And I don't think he's going to be able to. I think Tillis has boxed him in. It's a very fair compromise on ethics. And quite frankly, Trump already did his 2 meme coins, and he's got immunity, and so he's not really, this is just ego. You read the two, you can't really tell the difference, other than it allows the state attorney general not to sue the individuals, but to sue the DOJ. You and I could negotiate that thing tomorrow if you got permission from your buddy, the president. If the Republicans don't put it on the floor, it's because they know the version they're going to put isn't even going to get their 50 of their guys.
Right.
50-50 chance they do.
You're still bullish that this gets done in 2026.
I am.
All right. It's just to me, I just would be a big shout out to the crypto bros out there. Don't give any money to these people. If they're not going to put it on the floor and then they're going to blame the Democrats, don't give the money to the people. Be smarter than that. Okay. I just don't think that's a winning strategy for the industry.
All right. So that's my question is, how do you respond to that? If Tillis doesn't even get this thing to the floor, what happens post this fallout coming midterms? How do you think the industry is going to respond to this, especially with these Republicans?
Yeah, it's a good question. And first, I just wanted to say with Anthony's mention of crypto bros, it actually goes back to the editorial where they said crypto boys. The crypto boys out there, I just want to flag that I am not a crypto boy. I've been doing this for 10 years. So wanted to highlight that. But ultimately, I think that there is a big question about what happens politically. This is something that the crypto industry established 3 years ago now in terms of stand with crypto. I think the superpower is the fact that you've got 3 million people who are voters who care deeply about who is pro crypto and who isn't. Those ratings on standwithcrypto.org, people go and look at those and they care about there's a voters hub. So I think that the crypto voter is going to play a very important role here. But ultimately, shiny object is money, right? It's all about the super PAC. It's all about where the super PAC spent in 24, where the super PAC will spend in 26. And ultimately, I think that's still up for grabs. Ultimately, the design is to get legislation passed. That was the goal of the super PAC. That's the goal of everybody who's involved, is to get clear rules in the United States. And if you have blockers, that's a problem. We need people who want to get this passed. And so once we see what happens over the weekend and into September, hopefully, I think it will become more clear what the political strategy is.
So do you think that if they do stretch this into the weekend, because many people have said this is going to take longer than just Saturday and Sunday, do you think there's still a possibility past the August recess?
I do, but I think it has to be, I think we have to get started. I think the idea that this will just be delayed inevitably is a really hard one, especially because we've been pushing for floor time since May. Since the minute it passed the Senate Banking Committee, we have been pushing to get on the floor. And so ultimately, I think that it does need to get started. I think we have to call the question. We have to see where people are. There are issues out there that are going to hang out there until the vote is called. People just don't put down their pens in Washington and stop trying to negotiate. That's not how it works here. People negotiate until the very last second to get as much as they possibly can. So ultimately, the leadership is going to have to say, pens down, we're done. We've got an ethics deal. We've got everything else lined up and we're going.
Yeah, there you go. Kara, it's been good talking to you. Thank you so much. We're going to be covering this very tightly over the next few days. So stay tuned for all that. But thanks for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
Love it. Thanks so much for having me.
If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.